Welcome to another episode of Women in Focus. Our woman in focus today is an activist, and she has her eye on the premiership of British Columbia. While this program is being presented for you, she is getting ready to fight for that seat. Let's meet her. Her name is Anjali Appadurai. Anjali, you're most welcome in our program. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm in the presence of a giant here.
Oh my God. I just introduced you as an activist. Tell me something about why activist?
Yes, you know, it's not a label that I ever took on for myself, but
it was given to you.
It was given to me. I think the work that I was most drawn to led me to this place where I'm now, I suppose, in opposition to the status quo, the way things are, and believe that we can live in a better world. And I guess that's what makes me an activist. But I think that term can apply to so many things.
So many things, that's right. So let's just go there for a second. What is it that is not working according to you? And then what is it that you would be able to do that will make life for us, British Columbians, better?
Well, you know, you can trace the problem back to so many, you can diagnose it back through history at so many different points in history. You could trace it back to the early days of colonization. You could trace it back to the formation of this model of government. You could trace it back to policy decisions that were made in the last 100 years, 50 years, 30 years, even 10 years. But the fact of the matter is, I think we live in a society here with this model, this economic model and political model that we live under here is something that has been exported to the rest of the world. And we live in a global order where our priorities are backwards. And we have not created a social or economic system that prioritizes life and well-being and the longevity of our planet and the well-being of future generations above short-term profit and growth. So I would say, maybe if I had to boil it down, we live in a short-term mindset system. And now we look at what's happening to the world around us with climate change. Climate change, to me, is a symptom of the disease. It's not the disease itself.
It is not the disease itself.
Yeah, it's the earth speaking to us in the language of, you know, these droughts and fires and floods, and it's telling us you're going in the wrong direction. And we look at the prospects of the youth today.
Right.
And you look at how they view their future, and the way they view their future is not bright and hopeful. It's sort of murky and unsure. And so that, to me, speaks to that a deep shift is needed. And I believe that shift is possible, and that is what makes this run for premiership seem naive to many. But I know that I'm part of a tradition that is around the world, happening in small pockets, small uprisings around the world, where we see this alternative vision and we believe in it and we want to bring it to life.
There must have been a catalyst for you to suddenly one day wake up and say, I'm going to run for the premiership. What was it? What was it that just one day prompted you to do it?
It was a number of things, but there was a moment. So, I mean, the backstory to that is that I've done, my career has been in advocacy, and I've never been in electoral politics. I saw myself sort of best placed outside the system, talking to the decision makers, pushing the decision makers. But last year, in the wake of a sort of unprecedented year of climate impacts in BC, the heat wave that killed 600 people and the atmospheric flooding, there was a federal election. And I was convinced by mentors of mine to step into that race and sort of break that wall between activism and electoral politics. And I sort of did that on a whim, not knowing what I was stepping into. And it ended up being a beautiful groundswell of a campaign where all my grassroots connections from a decade all stepped up into this big, wonderful, horizontal, self-organized campaign that gained so much momentum. We came very close to winning. It was around 400 votes. And after that, I was tired because I didn't know what I was stepping into with something like that. And I was very excited to do the work that I was passionate about, which was working with diasporic communities to understand this climate crisis through a lens that is not just environmental.
Right.
And that's something that I'd struggled with growing up as a brown kid here. You know, climate issues were framed as this protect the environment, save the trees, recycle, that kind of thing. And I just didn't resonate with that. To me, it was, I realized later in life that it's a deeply human issue, a deeply anti-colonial issue. And so fast forward, there were whisperings of our current premier, John Horgan, stepping down. And there were a number of organizations that I work with, environmental groups, climate groups, who started seeing an opportunity for the movement to put forward a candidate into this race, to sort of draw a line in the sand and say, things are going in the wrong direction and we need to turn this ship around. And we need a clear vision for how to do that. And so they were knocking on my door for this for many months, and I was very hesitant. I was like, I don't want to step into that, you know, high octane campaign mode. You know, I want to take time. I want to set this up properly. But, you know, in the arc of justice, not every moment gets to be set up perfectly. and so I was up in northern BC. This was the moment. I was up in northern BC at a Peace and Unity Summit hosted by Wet'suwet'en and Gitxsan hereditary chiefs.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful invitation.
Yes.
And you know, one thing they did very differently. Usually you have a summit and it's 3 days of speakers and discussion. But they said the first day we're not doing any work. You're going to get on a raft and you're going to raft down the river, the Wet'suwet'en River, and you're going to spend the day on the land. And so we're rafting down this river, and it's one of the most pure rivers where you can still drink straight out of it. So we're on these rafts just putting our water bottles in the river and just drinking straight from this pure water. They're fighting a pipeline on their territories right now that's being pushed through by the state. And to me, that battle against that pipeline represents the frontier of the climate crisis. And then I was driving down from this gathering, and it was nighttime, long 13-hour drive, and it was a very dramatic night sky. I remember the moon was hanging low, and I was getting phone call after phone call from youth groups across the province because they'd heard whisperings that maybe I was the one being pushed. And it was young people calling me. They got my number through through friends of friends. And they were sort of begging me they said, give us something to organize around.
Right.
Give us something to mobilize for.
Right.
Just be the candidate and we'll rise up as a movement to make this campaign worth it. And it was on that nighttime drive after just being with the hereditary chiefs and them saying, you should do this, and then receiving all these calls from these young people. And
it just sealed it.
I just sealed it. And so I called my core group at like 1 a.m. that night. And I said, okay, let's do it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautifully explained as well. I mean, I was there with you, you know, rowing with you and drinking that water. That's amazing. I want to take you to your childhood because you talked about, you know, your childhood here. So let's take a short break and come back.
Sure.
Anjali Appadurai is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Our Woman in Focus today is Anjali Appadurai. Anjali, were you born here in Canada?
No. I was born in India, in Madurai, Tamil Nadu.
Madurai, what a beautiful place. A place of, what, 1,000 temples?
The temple city.
Oh, wow. And the temple of Saraswati is there as well, I understand. Beautiful. So, how old were you when you came to Canada?
I was 6, my family.
Wow. So your formative years were in India and then you started here.
Yes, exactly.
So, how many in the family?
When we came, I had one younger sister, so just the 4 of us immigrated. And then the 3rd one was born here.
Okay,
later.
so you
surprise.
3 sisters?
3 sisters.
Lovely.
And the eldest.
Yeah. So when parents came here and you were a little girl, Indian parents have these set stuff for their kids. I want you to be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer.
Yeah.
So, which one were you
Yeah.
supposed to be?
Well, I was, my parents, I didn't realize until later in life how unique my parents were. First,
Yeah.
in their vision to immigrate to a
Right.
place where we didn't have any family or friends.
Ah.
They came literally just alone, a sense of adventure. And I was supposed to be something, one of the above.
Yes.
But they didn't prescribe to me.
No.
They just wanted me to be the best at whatever I did. But we were always encouraged, and this is where I am incredibly lucky. They always encouraged us from a very young age to simply find our passion.
Right.
They wanted to see our career and our profession flow from passion. I mean, almost to a fault. They'd be like, "What's your passion? What is it?" And mine was very clear from a young age. I wanted to write. I was
Yes.
a bookworm, and I wanted to sort of tell stories and frame things. And somehow, in a weird way, that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So, as you were growing up, with parents giving you all kinds of freedom to do what you want to do, was there a time when you felt that the Eastern culture and the Western culture was colliding or clashing?
Yes, I remember immigration being a rough experience for me at the time. We moved into the Fraser Valley. The first year we moved a lot. So I went to a number of different schools in that first year. We were in Mission, then we were in Maple Ridge, then we were in Coquitlam. It was a very rough transition because
Right.
I was the only brown kid in any given classroom.
Right.
And I was very nerdy and a bookworm, and I had this accent, and I had this, I remember practicing in the mirror to sort of like get rid of my accent.
And who helped you to get rid of the accent? A television show?
Just learning from the people around me. I think that's what it was, and practicing.
I think as kids, you can learn very quickly.
Very fast.
And it's easy to mimic something very quickly, isn't it? When you're
Yes.
older, it gets a
Much
little
harder.
difficult. Yes.
Much harder.
So, and at that point, a nerdy, quote unquote, bookworm is going through life, and then suddenly, this person is born.
It took a lot of work to get here. I had a very special and unique journey because of, I think, what I inherited from my parents was
Yeah.
a very global outlook.
An adventurous streak in you.
Yes, I kept that with me. My parents were ready to drop everything and move across the world to a completely unknown place. They faced a lot of racism along the way. I think the first place where we found community was in the church because my family's Christian. And so that helps. We didn't, we didn't have it as hard as some immigrant families who come in and don't have a
Right.
faith community.
That's right.
So we're very lucky, very privileged in a lot of ways. But when I grew up, I just had this deep, adventurous, global streak. I wanted to see the biggest possible picture of everything. And I think in the back of my mind, when I look back at it now, I was always trying to reconcile where I came from, the conditions in India where I came from with this place that we had moved to. And I was always trying to figure out my story of the world, why the world was the way it was, why those disparities existed, why things were so different. And so in high school, I applied to a global school program called United World Colleges. And it's a network of international schools around the world that are, you get a full scholarship and you go and you study with students from all around the world.
Right.
And I got it, and I was so lucky. I got a provincial scholarship, actually.
Wow.
And so I went to this international school in New Mexico with, it was 200 students from 96 countries.
Oh my God.
So you're just getting this incredible cultural experience.
Yes.
So that was really what I was craving. And so I learned that those were really formative years. And then after that, I went to school in the States, university in the States, and then I entered international climate politics. And that first part of my career was jet setting, was traveling around the world, was understanding this global crisis of our time from many different cultural, geographic, political perspectives. And so that's, I think, that was my education. That was my formative sort of, this is who I am. This is who I am. It's actually a deeply globalist view of very local problems.
Beautifully said. I was thinking when you and I were talking before the program, and I mentioned that I think the sun is going through its midlife crisis. It's having menopause right now, and there are hot flashes, and that's what we're experiencing.
The climate crisis is very much real. Unfortunately, while we may not want to believe it, it's not simply cycles. It is we have so many people operating under this sort of growth model, this capitalist growth model, and that has consequences on our environments all over the world.
Right.
We're seeing rivers dry up that haven't been dry in thousands of years. We're seeing heat waves that haven't happened in thousands of years. So all of these things are happening. The policy solution should never fall on individual people.
Right.
First of all, because the crisis was not created by individual people.
Yes.
It was created by a very dirty extractivist system that wants to extract all the natural resources, burn them for profit that doesn't actually reach the people.
Right.
The profit stays with a very few, in a very few pockets.
A handful of people.
Yes, and that's where we've gone wrong. And so the policy solutions to this are to draw that money down. So first of all, close down this extractivist paradigm. Manage its decline while taking care of people, so that we're no longer burning all the natural resources that we have, the oil and the gas, and cutting down old 5,000-year-old trees, and just drawing from the earth as if it's a never-ending resource. But instead, managing the end of that. We're at the end of a paradigm. We're at the end of the extractivist paradigm, and starting to look towards renewable and sustainable models that is about people's well-being. So it's not about putting the burden of climate change on individual people. We can't handle that. Life is hard and expensive right now. It shouldn't be, on top of that, you take responsibility for climate change. If you're not driving an electric car, and if you're not buying green everything, then you're not dealing with the issue. That to me is totally wrong. That's backwards. Climate change is about redistribution, and it's about a healthier relationship with the earth.
With the earth.
With the earth and with the economy.
So let's talk about that, but take a short commercial break and come back.
Sure.
The program has to be paid, right? Somehow.
Of course.
Anjali is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Anjali Appadurai is our Woman in Focus today. We were talking about climate change and the onus on individuals to change the world. We are, 8 billion people now? Almost 8 billion. We're 7 point something. Don't you think the population explosion is also a reason why we have so much dearth of things that we need?
If I had to give a short answer, no.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think population is the reason. And although it's a very easy place to go, I think a lot of people go there because we don't see, I think the real sort of culprits are less visible. And so I like to sort of expose them and point them out. Because, the earth is capable of carrying all of us. It's our decisions with how we choose to exist on the earth.
Okay.
And so we have enough. We have enough food, we have enough water, we have enough for all, but the distribution of those things is the problem.
Okay.
The problem is that we have a system where those goods and the resources of the earth are hoarded by a very few.
Okay, so let me bring you back to your current project, which you want to be the premier of our province. And I think I would love to see a woman as a premier of all the provinces and the world, because women think logically, and with the heart, not with just this. Yes. So what do you think would be the first task that you would like to tackle when you become the premier of the province?
I would like to see us meet the crises of the time at scale.
Okay.
And so that means a few things. But the first thing it means is acknowledging the scale of the crisis.
Okay.
And that's one thing we haven't heard from our government at all. You know, we are at a point where our public systems are really under severe strain to the point where they are unraveling. And that points to me to, you know, that's decades of policy choices that got us to this point. But I think being honest with the public is the first thing to say, okay, we are in this bad situation. We all feel it. You know, we feel it in our pocketbooks. We feel it in the air that we're breathing. We feel it in our lives.
Right.
And the pandemic has worsened and exacerbated all of that. So the first thing is the honesty and the transparency. And then the second thing is this piece about redistributing wealth and goodness back into the hands of people by putting a new set of values at the core of policymaking. So I would like to see our government be open with the public about the set of values that's going to govern policymaking in this next era. And that is values that are about well-being for people on the planet. And so you talked about taxation. I want to see taxation for the companies that have experienced record profits during the pandemic, while everybody else experienced a pinch in their pocketbooks. I want to see redistribution of wealth and resources through the economy back to the people. I want to put people first. And I think the first step is to lay out those values and make that clear, and then allow budgetary priorities to flow from that. Everything has to flow from the values. So it's a values shift.
Beautiful. If I had more time, we could continue talking about this and unraveling, maybe like an onion, more layers.
Yes.
Right?
It's so complicated.
It is. But I admire your gut and grit for this particular campaign of yours, and I wish you all the best for this. And thank you for being a woman in focus today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Sushma-ji.
Anjali Appadurai has been our woman in focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back.